The next item of business is First Minister's questions. At question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you. This week's programme for government promises to deliver 100,000 more GP appointments. But Public Health Scotland says that over the past year there were 500,000 fewer GP appointments than in the year before John Swinney became First Minister. BMA Scotland says the SNP's pledge is equivalent to just one extra day of appointments, an increase of less than 1%, and that's if the SNP even delivers it. Public Health Scotland data also reveals that in the first 3 months of 2025, the number of GP appointments was the worst on record. The SNP's programme for government is a pathetic con. Is the limit of John Swinney's ambition to undo a small amount of the damage inflicted by John Swinney?
First Minister.
So the programme for government set out the steps that we are taking to expand capacity within the health service to meet the demand for appointments with GPs. Yes, it includes the delivery of 100,000 additional appointments that will be available through GPs to look at particular high-risk factors such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity and smoking. But there will also be an expansion of the availability of Pharmacy First services, which are designed to meet healthcare needs of individuals where relevant, and also includes the expansion of the availability of allied health practitioners within frontline healthcare services, with a commitment to expand the funding available to primary care services as a greater proportion of new NHS funding. The combination of these factors will make an impact on the access to GP services in Scotland.
Russell Finlay.
So after 18 years of failure, John Swinney is now desperately trying to clear up the mess that his government has made. Now, BMA Scotland says that government rhetoric is failing to match reality, and the Royal College of General Practitioners of Scotland say they, quote, simply don't have the workforce capacity to deliver the 100,000 extra appointments. The way to increase appointments is to increase the number of GPs. The SNP promised 800 more, but that hasn't happened. They constantly make big pledges about the NHS, but always fail patients. The SNP never keep their word. So why should anyone believe John Swinney will keep his latest promise when the SNP break them all the time?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, the number of GPs has increased. In 2017, there were 4,904 GPs. There's now 5,211 on latest statistics. The second point is that the government is putting in place arrangements on the 100,000 appointments as a consequence of negotiating that agreement with the self-same organisations that Mr Finlay has referred to. So what the people of Scotland know from my government is that we are absolutely focused on delivering on the issues of concern to the people of Scotland. Part of that is about improving access to the National Health Service, and as I set out to Parliament on Tuesday, this government is absolutely focused on delivering on the people's priorities.
Russell Finlay.
He says he's focused on delivery, he's focused on spin. Now let's look at the SNP's record on the NHS. They published an NHS recovery plan at the start of this Parliament. They claimed it would, and I quote, drive the recovery of our NHS not just to its pre-pandemic level, but beyond. Now, my party quite rightly condemned Humza Yousaf's plan as embarrassingly thin and flimsy, and it turns out the SNP agreed with us. We now know what Nicola Sturgeon really thought of her government's big plan. She said, and I quote, "My specific concern is that it's awful." For once, Nicola Sturgeon was right. Now, John Swinney was COVID Recovery Secretary at this time, so he must have had a view on it too. So what words would he use to describe it?
First Minister.
I don't think it's a particular revelation for Parliament to hear that the Conservatives condemned something. They condemn absolutely everything. They've got nothing. They've got absolutely.
Let's hear
nothing.
One another.
They've got absolutely nothing constructive to contribute to the debate. So let me just say to Mr Finlay that under my term in office as First Minister, we promised to carry out 64,000 extra appointments by the end of March 2025, and we didn't do that. We didn't do that because we delivered 105,500 extra appointments and procedures over that timescale, and we will deliver more in the forthcoming parliamentary year. So let me just say to Mr Finlay, so that he's not worried about this in the future, there will be more delivery by this government in the course of the next 12 months, and I'll be very happy to answer parliamentary questions about that, not just before the election, but after the election, when I remain First Minister.
Russell Finlay.
It was a simple question, but I'm not really surprised that John Swinney isn't prepared to come clean about what he thought at the time, because this is a dishonest government addicted to secrecy.
Mr Finlay, let's carry out our business in a courteous manner.
We saw this when Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney deleted their messages that should have been provided to the UK COVID inquiry. We see it with the SNP wasting taxpayers' money on a shameful cover-up about their NHS recovery plan. They spent 4 years hiding the truth from the public about what Nicola Sturgeon really thought. Humza Yousaf's plan caused waiting lists to rise, not fall. It was flimsy rubbish, as we said. Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney both knew. But the SNP hid the truth from the public, so Humza Yousaf failed upwards. John Swinney helped Nicola Sturgeon's awful Health Secretary become an awful First Minister. If the SNP had been honest and transparent, would Humza Yousaf have become First Minister?
First Minister.
What an absolutely miserable contribution to parliamentary discourse. It really is. It is completely and utterly. It's all the Conservatives have got left. They're in such a... I don't know why Rachel Hamilton's laughing, because...
Let's hear one another. We have observers in the gallery. We have people tuning in online. Let's make sure that we can all hear what's being said.
The public cast a judgment on the Conservative Party last Thursday, and it was pretty damning indeed about the future of the Conservative Party. What the public are interested in, and what I'm interested in, is delivering on the priorities of the people of Scotland. And right at the heart of the Government's programme is investment to support increased capacity in the National Health Service, so that we deliver more GP appointments, better access to GP services, and we get waiting lists down. That's going to preoccupy my thinking as First Minister, and I'm going to leave Mr Finlay to sit on the sidelines, as he does every week, throwing insults around, contributing nothing. I'm going to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, this week, after 18 years in office, the SNP conceded that they have no plan, are out of steam and have lost their way. John Swinney announced a bland and unambitious programme for government that does nothing to address the issues that Scotland faces. No plan to fix the NHS crisis created by the SNP. No plan to deal with the falling standards and sorry violence in our schools presided over by the SNP. And no plan to end the scandal of 10,000 homeless children on John Swinney's watch. But when a member of this Parliament raised the issue of homeless children, John Swinney shamefully told them, and I quote, to find something else to moan about. In a damning assessment, Shelter Scotland called John Swinney's plan a programme for homelessness. Does he think they should find something else to moan about?
First Minister.
Trying to set out to Parliament on Tuesday was the fact, and I may have used language that was particularly not worthy of me, so if I've done that and people are concerned about that, then of course I regret if I've used language that's not been appropriate for the way I go about my business. But let me just come back to the facts of all of this. So the facts of all of this is that since 2007, when this government came to office, we've delivered 47% more affordable homes per head of population than in England and 73% more than in Wales. In addition, in last year, we've had more house building completions in Scotland per 10,000 people in Scotland compared to England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So And we're also just passed the budget, which Mr Sarwar didn't support, which is investing £768 million in affordable housing investment in Scotland. So we are addressing the homelessness issues that we face in our society. We're taking action to support local authorities in tackling void accommodation. We'll continue to do that, and we'll focus on making sure we address the needs of people in Scotland.
Anna Sarwar.
The fact is that we have 10,000 homeless children, and John Swinney has no plan to deal with it. Now, he said the focus of his programme for government was fixing the NHS that he and his colleagues in the SNP have broken. But yet again, the details prove that they have no idea how to fix the mess they created. It's so bad that Dr Ian Morrison, the president of the BMA, described his plan by saying, yet again, the rhetoric on this is failing to match a reality. Now, we agree we need to end the ATM rush for a GP appointment. But what is John Swinney's plan? One extra appointment for every GP every fortnight. That's hardly going to end the ATM rush for GP appointments, is it?
First Minister.
Well, that's only one part of the plan that we're taking forward, and I'll come on to that in a second. But before I get to that, let's just look at the issue about temporary accommodation. There's 20 local authority areas, because of the financial support being put in place by the Scottish Government, have reduced the number of children in temporary accommodation. 12 local authorities have reduced the number of households in temporary accommodation in 2023-24. Why is that happening? It's happening because the Government has put financial support in place to make sure that void accommodation can be brought back into use so that families can be accommodated. That's a change in government policy, a change that took place under my leadership. Now, yes, right now, it's all happening right now as we speak, with local authority temporary accommodation levels coming down because of investment in this government, investment that the Labour Party refused to support in the budget. So they shouldn't come here complaining about housing when they wouldn't be prepared to just press a button to vote in favour of £768 million. No wonder I complain about the Labour Party whinging about things. Now, on the issue of GP appointments.
Let's hear one another.
On the issue of GP appointments.
Let's hear one another.
On the issue of GP appointments, there are a number of measures the Government are taking. Yes, we're delivering 100,000 additional appointments for GPs. We're also expanding the Pharmacy First services to reduce pressure and demand on GP services, and we're expanding the availability of allied health practitioners within frontline health services. These measures will deal with the issues that are raised about the ATM rush by reducing pressure on GP services. That's the plan the Government is taking forward. That's what the Government is going to implement.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney just exposed himself all over again on Tuesday, saying shameful, find something else to moan about homelessness, standing up and apologising for the bad language because that's not how he operates, and now complaining about whinging about homelessness. Shelter Scotland called it a programme for homelessness, and he should wake up and listen to what they have to say. Now, the deadly situation in our NHS caused by the SNP is so vast, but whole areas were omitted from his programme for government. And take just one, our ambulance service. Today, Scottish Labour can reveal shocking new figures that show ambulances are being left queuing up outside hospitals for hours on end, turning car parks into makeshift A&E wards across Scotland. Sick patients getting life-saving treatment in parking bays outside the hospital. At Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, one ambulance was stuck outside for over 15 hours. In Ayr, another waited nearly 15 hours. In Elgin, 12 hours. Car parks turned into A&E wards, corridor care now under malady, 800,000 stuck on waiting lists, and record number of Scots forced to go private. Isn't it the case that the party that created Scotland's NHS crisis can't be the one to fix it?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, on performance in our hospitals, we obviously face significant challenges remaining in the National Health Service, and I have acknowledged those in all my answers to First Minister's questions. What we find, for example, is on the 4-hour A&E targets that there has been an improvement in performance in the latest data and a strengthening over recent weeks. When we then look at the delivery of pledges on waiting times within our National Health Service, as I indicated in my earlier answer to Mr Finlay, we pledged to carry out 64,000 additional appointments by the end of March 2025, and we didn't do that. We delivered 105,500. And in addition to that, we've put in place investment, again, which the Labour Party couldn't bring itself to support in the budget. And the point I'm making to Parliament is the Labour Party comes here and complains about issues but won't actually do the heavy lifting of supporting the budget to make the investment possible. Can I just point out to the Labour Party, they voted against record investment in the National Health Service of £21 billion, and they then come here to complain to me about different issues. That's the hypocrisy I'm highlighting from the Labour Party today. We've set out that our investment in the NHS will be focused on addressing the priorities of the people. That will be about reducing waiting times, improving access to GP services, and the Government will deliver on those commitments.
Question number 3, Patrick Harvie.
I first raised the need for rent controls well over a decade ago, to the complete disinterest of the SNP Housing Minister of the day. By then, private rented housing had already been growing dramatically for years, but rents had continued to spiral. And the situation now is far more severe. Even if rent controls had just been in place for the last 5 years, people renting their homes in places like Glasgow and Edinburgh would be thousands of pounds a year better off. Now, I'm glad that Green efforts and the work of tenants' unions have resulted in a housing bill with rent controls for Scotland, even if it is weaker because of SNP amendments. And I'm glad that our plans for energy efficiency rules for private landlords are finally going to happen as well. But can the First Minister explain why it took so many years of pressure from the Greens to make the SNP accept that rents are too high, standards are too low, and that urgent action is needed?
First Minister.
Well, there are, of course, a whole range of different provisions in statute to protect tenants in the existing arrangements. Indeed, there's protections around evictions. There have been protections around winter evictions, and there is support in place through discretionary housing payments to assist tenants as well. So there's been a whole range of different measures put in place by the Scottish Government over the years to protect tenants. And I welcome the fact that we are in agreement with Mr Harvie on the question of the housing legislation that's in front of Parliament just now. That's been passed at stage 1 by Parliament. Stage 2 is being considered by the Scottish Parliament, and we will introduce a system of rent controls, and I look forward to further parliamentary scrutiny on that issue.
Patrick Harvie.
The frustration comes with the delay, and I know that frustration is felt by SNP party members who voted for rent control policy for many years as well, without action happening. There was never any need for these many years of delay, and we could have done far more good for people by acting sooner. This housing bill must make rent more affordable, and it will need to be strengthened if it's going to do that. But it also must provide more protection for people who rent their homes. People deserve the right to withhold rent payments when issues like mould, damp and serious repairs are being left by landlords for months, sometimes for years on end. Will the First Minister back the Green proposal to give people the right to withhold rent payment until repairs are completed, to stop landlords profiting while they ignore their responsibilities? Or is this another issue that will take 10 years of pressure before the Government acts?
First Minister.
Well, obviously, as I said in my earlier answer, the bill is going through stage 3 consideration, and if there are amendments coming forward, ministers will consider the issues that arise out of that process, and ultimately the bill will come back to Parliament for stage 3 consideration. So I acknowledge the issue that Mr Harvie raises with me. Obviously, the purpose of the rent control legislation is to make sure that tenants have more say, they have more control, that landlords fulfil their obligations, and those considerations will lie at the heart of the legislation.
Question number 4, Kevin Stewart.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to water scarcity alerts issued by SEPA for the east of Scotland in light of low rainfall and warm temperatures.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, SEPA's latest report highlighted that 17 out of 47 areas in Scotland are in alert status for water scarcity, and most of the rest of the country are in early warning status. An update on that position will be published by the regulator SEPA later on this afternoon. SEPA have contacted those who abstract water, including businesses and farmers in affected areas, and has provided them with advice. Public drinking water supply in those areas is not affected. We are working closely with SEPA, Scottish Water and others to ensure that water supply is monitored and supported in line with Scotland's National Water Scarcity Plan. Climate change is driving more extreme conditions, and we all need to adapt to that reality. I urge businesses, organisations and individuals to do their part to plan ahead and use water wisely.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the First Minister for that answer. It's worrying that many rivers, including the Dee and Don, which bound my constituency, have so low water levels at this time of year. And in spite of nature's clear warnings, we're currently witnessing climate change denial and an even stronger pushback against net zero and a just transition from the likes of Farage and even Tony Blair. Does the First Minister share my concerns that the rise of this regressive anti-net zero agenda puts all of the vital work that is going on to grow our green economy and to create jobs for the future at great risk?
First Minister.
I do share those concerns. The position that we find ourselves in at the present moment, with a water scarcity map in early May, which is really quite difficult to consume because of the acute challenges that are being faced at this time of the year, where we would ordinarily never face these issues about water scarcity, I think is an illustration of climate change. That requires us to take the necessary action that Mr Stewart has suggested in relation to climate action, and that's why it's so central to the Government's programme.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister, in light of the publication of the programme for government, what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that prevention is more strongly integrated into the health system.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I set out in January and reinforced in our programme for government, a long-term shift to prevention is central to sustaining and renewing our NHS. Scotland has led the way in public health action over many years, with bold measures such as the indoor smoking ban and minimum unit pricing for alcohol. We are building on this action by publishing a new population health framework in the coming weeks.
Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? But the Scottish Fiscal Commission's latest Fiscal Sustainability Report highlights the major effect that the rising prevalence of long-term preventable illnesses among Scots has on health spending, and how, if that rise continues as it is, it will have a sizable impact on Scotland's finances. Presiding Officer, in this chamber we always seem to talk in statistics to try and highlight how good we are or are not. However, as I've highlighted for the decade I've been in here, the only statistic that matters when we're talking about health is the fact that Scotland continues to be the unhealthiest nation in Europe, with many indicators continuing to worsen at an alarming rate. So, does the First Minister agree with me that this report must be the final wake-up call for action, that we must take greater steps to prevent illness through early intervention, particularly through encouraging healthier lifestyles, supporting the third sector, improving access to sport and physical activity? Because if the Scottish Government continue on the current trajectory, the health service will fast become unsustainable.
First Minister.
So I generally agree with the points that Mr Whittle has made about the importance of preventative interventions, and that is exactly what the Government is pursuing. As he knows, I commissioned the Christie Commission report in 2010, which gave us valuable insight on the approach to prevention, and that is being applied by the Government and has been applied by the Government around programmes such as the promotion of healthy eating, the work to tackle obesity, work to reduce harms from smoking and vaping, the work that we undertake on investment in sport and active living, the increases in vaccination uptake and the benefits of social prescribing, all of which have formed part of the Government's programme. And I assure Mr Whittle that that focus on prevention will remain central to the Government's programme.
Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister talks about prevention, But Edinburgh Integration Joint Board is being forced to make cuts to preventative care and third sector organisations, including the Stafford Centre, which supports 640 people with mental health issues and is estimated to save the NHS up to 4.4 million in hospital admission. Given the situation in joint boards across Scotland, does the First Minister recognise the prevention will not be possible if IGBs are in permanent financial crisis?
First Minister.
Obviously, I want to make sure that the type of services that Mr Chowdhury has raised with me are supported around the country. These are operational decisions for integrated joint boards to take. I would point out that, of course, they can only make the decisions based on the financial allocations made by this Parliament, and Mr Chowdhury was unable to support the allocations of funding that the Government has made to this issue. So we certainly will work with the integrated joint boards, but Mr Chowdhury cannot be absolved of his responsibility for failing to support the budget, which is delivering the investment that's necessary in health and social care. And the Labour Party can moan all they want at me about the public finances.
Let's hear one another.
They've not been prepared to put their money in to support people in the communities of Scotland.
Jeremy Balfour.
First Minister, following on from the previous question, I have been contacted by numerous charities in my region which are going to have to cease providing vital preventional care for individuals in Midlothians due to the IJB cuts. The First Minister said that he wants to lay aside politics and do the best for the people of Scotland. Will he now intervene in this crisis to make sure that the NHS Lothian do not cut their budget to the IJB, which means that these vulnerable people will be put out of the services that they require? And rather than talking about previous things, will he now be proactive in working with NHS Lothian, the Council, to make sure IJB get the appropriate funding?
First Minister.
Well, the Government obviously engages with health boards around the country, and local authorities have their own decision-making to make as part of the IGB structures, and we will engage constructively in any way we can to help on these issues. But Mr Balfour is another one who comes here and asks me to invest in local services when his party leader wants me to cut public expenditure by £1 billion. How's that going to help an IGB around the country? So I'm not going to tire in pointing out the total and utter hypocrisy of people who come here asking for tax cuts and want me to spend more money. It's hypocrisy on stilts.
Question number 6, Jackie Baillie.
To ask the First Minister when the landslip shelter on the A83 at the Reston Be Thankful will be complete.
First Minister.
The Government is committed to delivering an infrastructure solution to address the landslip risk at the Reston Be Thankful as soon as possible. Delivery of a permanent solution is a priority. In December, we published draft orders for both the long-term solution and future stages of the medium-term improvements. Construction can only commence if approved under the relevant statutory authorisation process, and therefore a timetable for construction can only be determined at that time.
Jackie Baillie.
The First Minister will be aware of the huge impact that the closure of the A83 at the Reston Be Thankful has on the economy and the people of Argyll. But this hasn't happened just yesterday. It's been a problem for more than 15 years. And all that local people want is a road that stays open when it rains. Instead, local campaigners have little confidence that the SNP will deliver a solution, given the government's track record on road building. And they are not whingers, First Minister. They fear that it could be another decade and £500 million later before the road is actually usable. Will the First Minister commit today to accelerating that much-needed work to ensure the people of Argyll are not disadvantaged by continuing closure of the A83?
First Minister.
The significance of this point for access to Argyll and Bute, and it's a point regularly made to me by Jenny Minto, the local member for Argyll. What we've done is we've taken steps to ensure that we strengthen the alternative route through the old military road, and so that it can be operational to provide that connectivity and to avoid the lengthy diversion that is required should all of that access be be unavailable. The steps that have been taken to ensure that the landslip shelter are put in place are underway, as I've told Jackie Bailey. The preparatory work is being undertaken, and the Government will be happy to share details with Parliament and with local stakeholders. And I'm pretty sure the Transport Secretary has met already with the Rest and Be Thankful interested parties to discuss this issue about the progress that can be made.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call Jackie Dunbar.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, Harbour Energy, the largest independent oil and gas firm in the North Sea and based in my Aberdeen Donside constituency, has announced it will cut around 250 onshore jobs in Scotland, and they have put the blame squarely at the foot of the policies of the Labour UK Government. Successive UK governments have ignored warnings about job losses, treated Aberdeen as a cash cow and is undermining efforts to deliver a just transition. Can the First Minister advise what assessment the Scottish Government has made of this ongoing situation? Will he join me in writing to the UK Government, urging them to take the action required to support jobs in Scotland's energy sector?
Let's hear Ms
Dunbar. And will he comment on the importance of a just transition for energy workers? And I don't find it funny.
First Minister.
President, I agree with Jackie Dunbar that a just transition for Scotland's valued and highly skilled offshore energy workers is absolutely essential. I'm deeply concerned to hear the news from Harbour Energy about their plans in Aberdeen. My thoughts are first and foremost with the workforce who will be facing an extraordinarily anxious time. The Deputy First Minister is speaking with Harbour Energy on this matter today. The fiscal and regulatory regimes for offshore oil and gas are reserved to the UK Government. The Scottish Government has made clear our concern about the extension and the scale of the Energy Profits Levy, and I urge the United Kingdom Government to engage with the industry to address the fiscal realities and implications of the UK Government's position.
Thank you. Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The 250 jobs going at Harbour Energy is going to be a devastating blow for those families. And Presiding Officer, I think enough is enough. We have a Labour government in Westminster determined to destroy the North East and the oil and gas industry. But we also have an SNP government asleep at the wheel with no energy strategy, a presumption against new oil and gas, and who are selling out communities all over the North East. So will the First Minister apologise to the 250 workers who are set to lose their livelihoods as his government turns its back on the North East of Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, my concern first and foremost is about the well-being of the workforce in Harbour Energy, and I don't think the way in which Mr Lumsden characterises this issue is in any way remotely helpful to addressing the concerns of that workforce. Might I point out to Mr Lumsden and to the Conservative Party that the Energy Profits Levy was a product of the last Conservative government, which
let's hear the First Minister.
It doesn't matter how much I get barracked in this Parliament, I will point out the hard realities and implications of the Conservative Party's decisions in the United Kingdom government. Now, one of the things which I think would help enormously in this whole area of policy is for the current United Kingdom government to do something that the last Conservative government didn't do, and that's to commit urgently, swiftly, to the Acorn carbon capture and storage project, because that would help us enormously. Now, the Conservatives never lifted a finger to make that happen, not one finger. I hope the Labour Party will not do the same.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In February this year, the First Minister told the Chamber that the overall attainment gap had reduced by 60%. But today, the UK Stats Authority has confirmed that the figure used isn't even part of his government's own framework for measuring the attainment gap. In their letter, they say that, to maintain trust and confidence in their statements, ministers should take care that when they claim progress of their policies, it is by their own defined measures. This intervention demolishes the government's claim on the attainment gap and exposes the truth. A generation of children have been let down by a government more interested in spinning numbers than solving problems. So can I ask the First Minister, will he now admit that he and his government have failed to close the attainment gap?
First Minister.
Well, I acknowledge the contents of the letter from the Statistics Authority. I've used one particular measure of the attainment gap. I could use others. The poverty-related attainment gap between young people from the most and least deprived areas meeting standards in literacy is at a record low in primary schools. The attainment gap has reached record lows between secondary pupils achieving third level in both literacy and numeracy. So those are some of the points. Now, I accept that there remains an attainment gap within Scottish education. I was out this morning at Brunston Primary School in the east of Edinburgh and saw at first hand the effect of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, which has supported the development of leadership in the school, which has enhanced the curriculum, which has led to greater engagement with families and a rise in attendance of young people at a school as a consequence of the investment we are able to make available as a government. So nothing is going to detract me from focusing on improving the life chances of children, whether that's children living in poverty, and making sure that we tackle the issues around household income and about engagement with schools, and that will lie at the heart of our steps in the attainment agenda.
Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In light of this being Deaf Awareness Week, can I ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government is doing to support deaf people in Scotland?
First Minister.
I welcome the contribution that Karen Adam makes on these issues. It is important to highlight the importance of Deafness Awareness Week to increase understanding of deaf culture and language. The Deputy First Minister met with members of the community last week. The BSL National Plan 2023-29 represents our ongoing commitment to making Scotland the best place in the world for BSL users to live, work, visit and learn.
Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As we've heard already this afternoon, the proposals by Edinburgh IJB are likely to now see key services cut. These include drop-in support, carer services, and as we mark VE Day, even veterans support services. The First Minister has proportioned blame for a budget which is not acceptable. It will cut £29 million from services here in Edinburgh. So can I ask him again, does he actually think that our health services will improve by the decisions being taken by the IJB, and will he agree to meet with a cross-party group of MSPs who are trying to raise this issue in Parliament and just have had the First Minister whack this back at us? We need action, and we want the First Minister to take heed of that today. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I'm just simply being straight with Parliament about the realities that we've got to face. That's what I'm doing. Miles Briggs is, I understand the issues he's raising with me. I'm totally familiar with them. I understand the importance of them. I've just answered Mr Whittle about the importance of there being a focus on preventative interventions, and many of the interventions that Mr Briggs is talking about are preventive interventions. But the point I'm making to Parliament is that the investment in these services doesn't happen by accident. It happens by political choice. Yeah. And Mr Briggs was one of those who voted against the government's budget, and he also argued in favour, as his leader did, for £1 billion worth of cuts in public expenditure. How does Mr Briggs think that it's possible to invest in local services with £1 billion of swingeing cuts from the Conservatives?
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, the Scottish Government announced the direct award of the West Coast ferry contract to CalMac, citing that there are no legal barriers to doing so. Yet oddly used the opposite argument as to why they couldn't award a contract to Ferguson Marine in Port Glasgow. But the real question on the minds of islanders is, will the removal of the tender process actually deliver better and more reliable lifeline ferry services? Just days ago, CalMac made a unilateral decision to reduce frequency of sailings to the Isle of Cumbrae. Now, that has been met by absolute fury on the island, described as absurd, reckless and ridiculous by local businesses, and I will forward that correspondence to the First Minister this afternoon. What comfort will the First Minister offer our island communities that they will be properly consulted before key decisions are made? And what comfort will they have that this decision to direct award this contract will actually improve their ferry services?
First Minister.
That's at the very heart of the direct award, is the objective of doing exactly that. One of the key obligations within the contract is the necessity to engage with communities, and there is a more significant role in the direct award to the Ferry Services Board, the Community Ferry Services Board, which of course is able to articulate on many of the issues that Mr Green has put to me. So the contract is structured to make sure community voice and community aspiration is right at the heart of the delivery of ferry services, and that will be a contractual obligation of CalMac.
Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The recent escalation of threats between India and Pakistan is deeply concerning for all of us across Scotland, but particularly for those such as my Glasgow Anniesland constituents of both Indian and Pakistani heritage. Many people will be anxiously watching the situation develop. Can the First Minister join me in urging for de-escalation in the region, and does he agree that peace and stability across the world is the best achieved by dialogue and diplomacy and not by violence?
First Minister.
The terrorist attack in Pahalgam and the escalating tensions between India and Pakistan are highly concerning. I share Mr Kidd's aspiration that all leaders should choose dialogue, diplomacy and shared humanity ahead of force and bloodshed. There can be no winners from further military escalation. The world has enough conflict on its hands at this present moment. So I do urge that dialogue to resolve these issues. Scotland's Indian and Pakistani communities enrich Scotland's society socially, culturally and economically. I am very mindful of the importance of encouraging and sustaining community cohesion in what will be a worrying time, and I will do everything I can to try to draw communities together at this anxious time in Scotland.
Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the past couple of months, I have been contacted by many survivors of domestic abuse from my West of Scotland region and across the country. Many of these brave women told me that their abusers were repeat offenders and that their ordeal could have been prevented. My Prevention of Domestic Abuse Scotland bill was published this morning, and, if passed, would create a domestic abuse register similar to the Sex Offenders Register, acting as a deterrent and giving further protection to potential victims. Therefore, I would like to ask the First Minister if the Scottish Government will be backing my bill, which has received the support of the third sector organisations as well as many survivors of domestic abuse.
First Minister.
I understand that ministers have met with Pam Gossel a number of times to discuss her bill. I acknowledge the fact that it has been published this morning. As always with members' bills, the Government will engage on this question, and we are always willing to explore any options to reduce crime and reoffending, and particularly as it affects domestic abuse within our society. So ministers will be happy to engage on that question.
Blair Hawhey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My constituents in Rutherglen will welcome the recent announcement that peak rail fares are to be abolished on publicly owned ScotRail. Can I ask the First Minister how much is anticipated that the average commuter in Scotland will save over the course of a year's travel, thanks to this intervention by the SNP, the only party that people in Scotland can rely on to protect their interests and deliver for them?
First Minister.
Well, the Government is absolutely committed to supporting individuals who face challenges in the cost of living crisis that we are experiencing. The steps that the Government announced on Tuesday will support commuters and, for example, an individual who commutes each working day between Edinburgh and Glasgow could expect to save almost £4,000 over the course of the year from September, which is a formidable saving to assist individuals in their lives. It's just another example of the cost of living guarantee that people are assured by a government that is prepared to put a budget to Parliament to support it and to make sure we help hard-pressed householders the length and breadth of Scotland.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney recently awarded all of his highly paid ministers a £20,000 increase in their salary. And despite saying he would not benefit from this, a Freedom of Information response I've received suggests that John Swinney did receive the increased salary in his most recent pay packet. So, given John Swinney said earlier he wants to be straight with Parliament, can he tell us if that is correct? His most recent pay packet included that uplift. Will he pay that money back? And does he accept the anger amongst people across Scotland that sees highly paid ministers get a salary increase while budgets are cut?
Yeah. First Minister.
President Officer, what I decided to do about ministerial pay was to apply the approach that pertained when Mr Ross was a minister in the United Kingdom government, which is
Mr Ross.
Which is that ministers are entitled to take their full pay as members of the Scottish Parliament, but that their ministerial pay remains frozen at 2008-09 levels, which I don't think actually was the position when Mr Ross was a minister. So ministers in the Scottish Government are getting the same pay as MSPs as everybody else, apart from one.
First Minister, Mr Ross, if I hear you once more, you will leave this chamber. First Minister.
So, just to be clear, because I think it's important that members of the public hear the facts about this, ministers are going to get their full MSP salary in the way that every other member of the Scottish Parliament gets their full salary, apart from one person, and that's me, because I have decided voluntarily to maintain the freeze on my MSP pay as well as my First Minister salary. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I have not had an increase in my salary as a consequence in terms of the cash payment that's been made. I will go and check it, and I'll make it clear this afternoon. I'm very happy to do that. I've got no worries about sharing that information, because what I've said to the public and to Parliament is that I will not take an increase in my MSP salary, and I will not take an increase in my ministerial pay. It will be frozen at 2008-09 levels. Now, if there's, I don't think from my recollection that any different pay has been put into my bank account. I'll go and check it. I'll go and check it, but I don't think there is. But I would have thought it says something about where the Conservative Party has reached. That they haven't.
Let's hear the First Minister.
I think it says something about the depths that the Conservative Party has now reached, that they are not prepared to take anything in good faith across this parliamentary chamber. The Conservative Party never ceased to amaze me about how low they will stoop. They are a disgusting organisation.
That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Michael Mara, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the gallery and the chamber to do so.